Me in Genesis chapter 18. I want to look at verses 1 and verse 2, and then verses 23 through 33. And obviously they'll be on the screen for you if it helps you like me that the words are bigger. If you have the King James Version, you'll find these holy, divine, and inspired words. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre. And he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. We pick up in verse 23. It says, And Abram drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure, which means perhaps, there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked. And the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said, and follow me now, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sake. Abraham thought about it, and he knew the fellas in the city, and he said, no, I know you ain't going to find 50. Abraham said, Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which I know I am but dust and ashes. He said, Perhaps that there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for the lack of 5? And he said, Abraham, if I find 40 and 5, I won't destroy it. Abraham looked down the street and looked at City Hall and went all around and said, No, that Lord, 45 is too much. He spake unto him yet again, verse 29, and said, Peradventure, perhaps there should be 40 found there. And God said, I will not do it for 40's sake. Abraham kept looking, looked through the yellow pages, walked around the city and said, You ain't going to find 40. And he said unto him, Oh, let not the Lord, please don't be angry with me, but and I will speak, perhaps that there should be 30 found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30. Abraham then went to the mall and went to the park and went to the church and said, I don't think, God, you're going to be able to find 30. He said unto him, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak, peradventure there be 30 found there. And he said, I won't do it for 30. And then he said, Behold, now I've taken it upon me to speak unto the Lord. Perhaps there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I won't destroy it for 20's sake. And Abraham kept talking. He said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure, perhaps 10, Lord. Maybe we can get 10. That's only 5 fingers on each hand. Can I get 10? And he said, I won't destroy it for 10's sake. And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communion with Abraham. And Abraham returned unto his place. Sad, sad commentary. As we continue to talk about embracing the God-filled life, today we want to lift up the particular subject, if you will, as we embrace the God-filled life. If we are going to embrace the God-filled life, then Sister Lee, we're going to have to lift everything up. If we are going to embrace the God-filled life, then we're going to have to lift everything up. Now let me get you on board early. When I say Jasmine Maddox lift everything up, I'm not talking about raising something or picking something up. When I talk about we're going to have to lift everything up, I mean that we're going to have to lift everything up by prayer. So that's what I mean when I say we're going to have to lift everything up. Keisha Collins, that means we're going to have to lift it up through prayer. The term prayer, as used in the largest sense, it includes all the forms of communion or communication with God. It embraces worship. It embraces praise. It embraces thanksgiving. It embraces supplication, and it also embraces intercession. Now, the definitive teaching, Deacon Andrew Williams, found in the scripture on the subject of prayer, it deals principally with the last two aspects, that of being supplication and intercession. Now, the importance of prayer, Sean Gibson, can be measured only by the prominence that's given to it in the scriptures and in the lives of those who were used by God. We see it important in Abraham's life because we see that beginning with Genesis chapter 12, every time Abram went to a different country, what he did was set up his altar. And when he set up that altar, that was an indication that Abraham was letting his neighbors know that I am bringing my God with me. Y'all might worship the God of the grass. Y'all may have a God for the dandelions. Y'all may have a God for the cuckabugs, but I've got one God and I'm bringing him with me. So when Abram set up his altar, he was letting them know, I will be in constant communication with my God. I don't care what you do here. I'm not going to try to stop you from what you're doing, but you ain't going to influence me to start worshiping the grass. You are not going to influence me to start worshiping dandelions. You are not going to influence me to start worshiping cuckabugs. I worship the true God of heaven, the one that made the heaven and the earth, the one that put the stars in the sky, the one that's the God that I worship. And that's what his altar represented. It represented, I am going to be in constant communication with my Lord. Moses prayed. He prayed for the nation, for the children of Israel. You remember God said, Moses, I'm about fed up with them. I'm about tired of them, and I'm coming down to destroy them. And thank God for Moses, a shepherd after God's own heart. He stood in the gap and said, God, I tell you what, I know they complain and they get on my nerves 3 days out of the week as well. But don't spare Israel, Lord. Don't take Israel. I want you to save them instead, and I want you to deliver me. If I could have did that. Samuel, the first judge, he actually accomplished more in one prayer than Samson did in 40 years of fighting. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. David said in Psalm 55:17, he said, evening, morning, and noon will I pray and call you. And since I call you, I know you will answer me. You remember 2 Kings chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. Hezekiah was sick, and they said the word of the Lord came to Isaiah, the son of Amos, and he said, go tell Hezekiah to get his house in order because he's getting ready to die. And once Isaiah went and delivered the message, Hezekiah, he didn't argue with Isaiah. He simply turned his face to the wall and said, God, I know that you are a just God. I know that you are a holy God. I know that you're too just to make a mistake. I know that you can't do any wrong. I just heard a pronouncement from Isaiah. But God, let me tell you, check my history with you. I've been walking according to your ways. I've been following your precepts. I went where you told me to go. I did what I told you told me to do. And before Isaiah could get out the room, God stopped him and said, turn around and go tell Hezekiah he got 15 more years. I wonder if any of you sitting out there, of us up here, can tell God, God, I heard what you said, but let me rehearse my stuff for you, God. I've been walking for you. I've been talking for you. I've been praying for you. And God changed his course of action, which is consistent with his eternal unchangeableness. Do you got that kind of track record where you can tell God, look at what I've been doing? How many of us can tell that, God, look at what I've been doing? I don't think a whole lot of us in here can say, check my record. Prayer is vital. Vital. It's vital. We're talking about the stuff that's going on in the world now. We're talking about all the craziness, the nonsense, all the just police brutality. You got this. You got folks shooting folk. You got this going on. You got folk molesting folk. You got folk doing this. Folk breaking in. Folk stealing. Folk doing this. Folk doing that. And we somehow think that Washington is going to stop it. Washington can't stop it. But I tell you who can stop it. Because there's a verse in the Bible in 2 Chronicles 7:14 where God said, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, he said, then will I hear from heaven and I'll heal the land and forgive their sin. Stop looking for Hillary, Barack, or whoever to stop some stuff that only God's folk can stop. He said, if my people, we blaming stuff on gangbangers, dope dealers, thugs. It ain't their fault. The reason the world is going to hell in a handbasket is for folk who claim to be Christ-like and who don't act nothing like Christ. Because he said, if my people. He tells us in Isaiah 56:7, he said, my house shall be called a house of prayer. And the prayer meeting we have is the less folk we have in any meeting. And yet he said, my house shall be called a house of prayer. He didn't say my house shall be called a house of preaching. He didn't say my house will be called a house of rehearsals. He didn't say my house will be called a house of this or that. He said my house shall be called a house of prayer. And guess the least amount of folk who here is on prayer service. So we telling God we don't even care about what he thinks. And then when something happens, we run to the church for prayer. Like, well, wait a minute. I mean, well, wait a minute. If we would pray, that would prevent some stuff. So now we wouldn't have to pray for what you're telling me to pray for, because prayer would have prevented that from happening. Then he tells us in Matthew, say, y'all done turn it into a den of thieves. Prayer is vitally important in the life of the church. It says in Isaiah 65 verse 24, let me show you how quick my God is. He said, and it shall come to pass, he said, that before they call, I'll answer. And then it said, Shayla, it said, and while they are yet speaking, I hear you. Mark 1:35, Jesus, the Son of God, the one that left his celestial home in glory and came down, even he as a Son of God prayed. It says in Mark chapter 1 verse 35, and in the morning rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place and he prayed. He was in communion with his Father. Luke 11:1, and it came to pass as he was praying, Jesus, in a certain place, when he stopped, when he ceased, one of his disciples said unto him, Lord, he said, teach us how to pray as John taught his disciples. Once again, that's what prayer service is for. It teaches you how to pray, because think about this now.